Welcome to episode 3 of Fighting Game Therapy. Today we have a question from OmiaMai55 on Twitter that says, "Hey, I'm a fan of the channel and I wanted to submit a question for you. Lately, I've been enjoying playing fighting games more competitively and trying to take my progress seriously after taking a bit of a break from competing and grinding. I enjoy playing multiple different fighting games, but I know that if I want to see the progress I'd be satisfied with, I can only really commit to 2. Having many options of games that I think are fun and interesting to play, it can be tough to narrow down. I think I'm more or less about ready to settle on Street Fighter 5 and KOF 15, but I'm still open to playing other stuff like Strive, CVS2, Plus R, and etc. What are the things that you think are most important when making that decision, and what draws you to your main game, Street Fighter 5? And what are your thoughts on trying to compete in multiple fighting games in general? Keep up the good work, love the channel, and what you're doing." Now, before we get to answering the question, as always, if you want to be included in the next episode of Fighting Game Therapy, all you have to do is go down to my description below, find my Twitter, and shoot me a DM. I hope to hear from you soon. Okay, so when it comes to settling on a game to play competitively, you brought up that you needed to commit to 2, which is kind of kind of an odd number to bring up, right? Usually people would say, I need to commit to 1 game, which is what I would probably say to you, but I know where you're coming from. There's a lot of shiny things in front of you and a lot of new content out in a bunch of different games. It's hard to stick to 1. If you genuinely feel like you need to pick 2, I get that. And to me, it kind of sounds like you've settled on 2. You just need a little bit of reinsurance, maybe. And based on the list that you've given here, Street Fighter 5, KOF 15, Strive, CVS2, and Plus R, all those games are pretty different, right? 3 of them are pretty modern, and 2 of them are a little bit older. So you really have to start thinking about what your priorities are. And it'd be very easy for me to just tell you right here to play whichever game is the most fun to you, and then cut the video, but I know you probably have a lot of fun on all these games, or multiple games, and it's hard for you to decide. So let's think a little bit about some different factors other than fun, because I'm going to assume that you like all of these games and you have fun playing all of these games. The first thing that I always think about is a little bit of player population and ease of use. And by ease of use, I mean, how easily can I just get on the game and press a button and get into a match? Because I'm not a big fan of going on Discords and like putting your little lobby link, because I've been burned in the past doing that, you know, and I know a lot of people have as well. You go into those Discords, you put your little lobby link, then you click the looking for games channel, and they're talking about like some of the most insane shit I've ever seen in my life. Like it's not always a good experience. And in my case, because I make videos about some of the games that I was going in the Discords and playing, you would see I would see my videos being posted in other channels and people just talking shit relentlessly, and it's like, man, this fucking sucks. Like, I'm done. I'm not playing this game. I'm just going to go back to Street Fighter. That might be some of my personal bias showing, you know. I just, as a person, value being able to hop on a game and press a button very highly, and having a pretty healthy player population. That doesn't mean you need to go scour the Steam charts and pick whichever one's at top. That just means you have to know what you're getting yourself into. If you pick something like Plus R maybe, or CVS2, I don't really know how the player base is for CVS2. I'm assuming you play it on Fightcade, so it's probably not terrible. But if you pick like Plus R or some other anime game like Grand Blue, just know you're going to have to work a little bit harder to find matches than if you pick SF5 or KOF 15 even. Now, if you have an offline scene that you're interested in joining, figure out what game they play and what game they run. And if it's on this list that you've given me, maybe, you know, try it out at least. Go hang out with them and try it out if they have like a public meetup or something. It's always fun to learn a game in the offline environment, or at least learn it with people who know it very well. It might give you a different perspective and help you understand what you're getting yourself into a little bit more. But no matter which one you pick, just make sure you don't get yourself overwhelmed. All of these games are difficult in their own right, in their own ways. You're going to see people using terms that you don't understand. You're going to see mechanics you don't understand. You're going to feel like it's not really worth learning, and you're going to keep switching games to try and find one that clicks a little bit better. And they're all gonna not click at first. You're gonna have to put some time into it. Don't be deterred by all the knowledge that you'll need to gain. Now, let's talk a little bit about the second question you had that said, what draws you to your main game, which for me is Street Fighter 5. As I said before, the player population and the easy use is really good for me. Like, I just get on and press a button and it'll start matchmaking. The only thing is the netcode is kind of iffy. You know, if you get a 3-bar, you're kind of rolling the dice, flipping a coin on whether it's going to be playable or not. If you get a 4 or 5 bar, it's usually great. It's usually fine. And if you live in like a city or a pretty centralized area, it's not hard to find 4 or 5 bar connections. Like when I go back to Houston, for example, I can find 4 to 5 bar connections all day. It's not a problem. The other thing that kept bringing me back to Street Fighter 5 though is when I would go play other games. When I would play Grand Blue, for example, I played that game for probably the longest. That was the longest break I took from Street Fighter 5. It was about 2-3 months I played Granblue like exclusively. Or even when I was playing Strive for a little bit, I was always reminded of what I liked from Street Fighter and what this game didn't have that I missed from Street Fighter. Or some of the things that the new game that I was playing did have that I didn't like that Street Fighter didn't have. As well as the fact that a lot of my friends from the Houston FGC just played Street Fighter still, and that was like the main game that they were running and playing. And I wanted to play with them still and compete, so I would always go back to Street Fighter, and I still do. I really do think Street Fighter V is in its best form right now. It's gone through a lot of ups and downs, but I think this is the best it's ever been. So for another game to want me to completely switch to it, I think it's just a tough task. I just really enjoy Street Fighter, and anytime I play another game, I'm always thinking about how it relates back to Street Fighter. I'm sure that happens to you when maybe you're playing like Strive, for example, and you're like, wow, I missed this character, I missed this mechanic from KOF 15. Things like that. You're just always thinking about the game that you actually want to play, and you just realize it one day. Or you've just sunk so much time into another series or to another game that you can't help but think about going back and playing it. Some people feel trapped, I think, in that way to their main series, that they've put so much time into it. It's like a sunk cost. But there's a big difference between actually liking the game and wanting to keep going back to it because you enjoy it, and feeling like you've sunk so much time into that game, so you need to go back to it. There's a difference there, and you'll realize it. Now, the last part of this question I thought was really interesting, where he said, what are your thoughts on trying to compete in multiple fighting games in general? Now, in my entire time of playing fighting games, I've only entered one tournament that wasn't for Street Fighter V. I entered one Granblue tournament, and I got 5th. Other than that, I've never played another game in a tournament. So when I read that, I actually went to the DreamHack page, because I'm going to DreamHack June 3rd through 5th for Street Fighter, but every game is only $1 to enter, because the entry to get into the venue, like to get into DreamHack, is pretty expensive, so it's only $1 to sign up for each game. After I read this, I opened the DreamHack Smash.gg page, and I entered Guilty Gear, like just to do it. I'm gonna be there already. I've never entered 2 games at one tournament, so I figured I might as well try and talk about it later on. But in general, people who I know enter a bunch of games when they go to a tournament. I mean, they just are. Some of them are to have fun, like certain games they just play for fun, see how far they go, and then they kind of have their main game that they've just grinded out and they hope to do well in. Broly actually did that at Texas Showdown. He entered Street Fighter and he entered Guilty Gear, and he did well in both. I think if you're a fundamentally sound player and you've put just a little bit of time into the other game that you're entering on the side, you can probably maybe squeeze some wins out, or depending on how good you are, maybe win something. It really depends on how good you are fundamentally, I think. Just for me personally, it's really hard to balance your time between 2 different games. Like, I want to be good at Street Fighter and like that style of gameplay, and then maybe something else on the side. But right now, that's not in the books for me. Like, I'm not really interested in being the best Guilty Gear player, like the best Smash player or something, right? I just want to be a really good Street Fighter player. And whatever happens in the future happens. It's just I'm not opposed to entering other things on the side that are free or like $1. But if it's like Texas Showdown, where I paid like $15 to sign up for Street Fighter, and then it's like another $15 for Guilty Gear for a game that I don't even really play like that, I'm not gonna do it. But yeah, I hope that answered your question, and I hope that everybody watching enjoyed. If you did, please consider subscribing, and I'll talk to you again soon.